The thing about the tattoo that I hate the most was the way it itched. I could live 1,000 years, and I'd still remember that itch. Hadrian said it itched because she wanted us to do something. The itch meant that our work wasn't done. The itch that woke you up at night, that made you wince in the chow hall, that burned as you lifted weights in the yard. That was her telling you that you needed to work harder for her, and that she had more for you to do. You had only to look at the angry red words on your body to know that she was displeased. I came to Stragview after a series of failed burglaries. I was a simple creature back then, not thinking past my next meal and my next hit of meth. I lacked direction. I lacked focus, but Stragview fixed all that. When the cops picked us up with stolen property, driving around in stolen property, I thought my luck had turned bad. But I was content to do my 5 years and get back to what I knew best: drugs and theft. The drugs were how I met Hadrian, and how I got hooked on something worse than meth. I remember the first time I met him, like it was yesterday. I had been inside for nearly a month, and I was still dope sick. You have to remember, I came into this world with meth in my blood, and this was the longest I'd ever been without so much as a contact high. I was pale. I'd lost a lot of weight. I wasn't shaking as bad as I had been, but I was still less than steady. I felt like death might be preferable to another 4 years and 11 months of this mostly white-knuckle sobriety. Hadrian saw me sitting in the shade, spilling more water on myself than I was drinking, and offered me the one thing I couldn't refuse. I thought I was seeing things when he put the baggie in my hand, and I would have gladly wrung his neck when he pulled it out of my reach just as fast. "First, hoss, you do a little something for me." I'd seen enough prison stuff to know what he meant, but I was wrong in this case. What he wanted me to do was keep a lookout while he and some of his associates boosted something from the rec office. I don't even remember what it was, something I didn't put much value in, and when he gave me the baggie and something I could smoke it with, I was ready to cry. I felt normal for the first time in weeks that night, and Hadrian invited me to do more work with him the next day. "We could use some new blood like you, kid." And when I asked about the organization, he lifted his sleeve and showed me that red, angry-looking tattoo, the one that said Jesse. I told him I hoped he hadn't paid much for that, and he just laughed in a way that let me know it was funny, but in a sad way. "I think sometimes I paid too much for it, but it's our ticket out of here. She's gonna free us, kid, and if you're with us, she'll free you too." I rolled my eyes back then, just glad to have my fix back, but soon I would come to understand. It took a couple of months, but eventually I found worth there. I woke up one morning to the strangest pain of my life. It was a burning, an itching, like I was being tattooed from the inside. It burned, the angry fire bubbling up against my skin. And as I gritted my teeth, I saw some of the people around me look over at me curiously. I thought maybe I had contracted scabies for a moment, something that was going around the dorm, but when I rolled back my sleeve and saw the raw red name of Hadrian's lady, I was furious. That bastard had tattooed me in my sleep. He had tattooed me, and I had never even woken up. I was furious, and when I saw him in the line for chow later, I put him against the wall between the foam bank and asked him what the hell he thought he was doing. He looked confused, but when I lifted him against the wall, my sleeve had come back and he noticed the fresh ink. He smiled, despite his position, and told me that she had found me worthy. I was so confused that I let him down, telling him that he better start explaining, and fast, before I beat his face in. Hadrian did not look particularly worried. That day, He told me about Jesse, the one he served. In the beginning, the marks were a death sentence. When they appeared, they were a sign that Jesse was coming to take your life force, and your days were numbered. Then the warden scattered her, something he had done before. But when she came back, she was different. I was one of the ones to keep my mark from that cycle, and instead of taking my life, she decided to make use of it. So we do things for her, so that when she comes back, she'll help us. Jessie is our muse, our goddess, and one day we will see her made flesh again. This went on and on and on, but I had to admit that Hadrian was persuasive. Why does she need a body? If she can act as a ghost, then why wouldn't she just stay a spirit? She's been a spirit for a long time, Hadrian told me, many of his disciples nodding, and she's trapped here for as long as she remains a spirit. If she hopes to escape, she needs a real body, and to do that, she needs our help. That was the start of my indoctrination. Hadrian was as good as his word, and the gang thrived. No, not a gang, I guess. A cult was more like it. We began to work immediately. Hadrian had a strange collection of things he needed, and very little of it made sense to me. He needed a nurse's uniform from medical. He needed a pair of stockings, which we also got from a nurse in medical, though not the same one, and a tube of red lipstick, which we filched from a volunteer in the GED program. After that, the requests became stranger and harder to fulfill. When he told the grounds crew that he needed a pocket of grave soil from the on-site graveyard, that one raised a few eyebrows. When he told the kitchen guys that he needed a handful of lard, they blinked at him, but provided. He asked for pig's blood, for holy water from the chapel, and finally, for something likely to get us all killed. He gathered us up around the card table one night, the TV blaring behind us as he laid out his most daring plan yet. Gentlemen, we are so close to being able to bring Our Lady back from the beyond. She is proud of all of us, he assured us, his arm scratching, sort of putting that to question. But this is going to be the biggest test of our mettle. We're going to steal from the warden's tower. We all got very quiet, and when Pete spoke up, I felt it properly encompassed what we were all thinking. Are you fucking high? Hadrian smiled at Pete indignantly. No, Peter, I am not. I have information from one of the contacts amongst the guards. He has it on good authority that the warden will be in town next Tuesday for a city council meeting. He's trying to get a new initiative pushed through so he can get inmates into the botanical garden. And he and the woman who chaired that particular panel have to meet with the council to get approval. It's the best chance we have to get the thing we need, and it may be our only chance to take it without being noticed. He laid it out like it was a heist in some movie, and we were going to Ocean's 11 all the money from the vault and walk out with our hands clean. There was a certain item, a locket, that we needed to complete the ritual. It was in the warden's private collection, a trophy cabinet of sorts, the last she knew, and she needed it back to reform her body. We were going in, posing as custodial inmates, and would clean the entryway and buff the floors, with a few of us going up to clean the office. We would be under supervision, but our babysitter would be one of the guards, the ones in our pocket. We would be in and out in an hour. The longest part would be buffing the floor. No one'll be the wiser, Hadrian promised, smiling in his fatherly way. Yeah, Charlie said, a little thief from Tiger, up until the warden comes back and notices it's missing. Have a little faith, Charles. Charlie snorted. I done enough breaking and entering and stealing from people to tell you that they don't lock it up if they ain't gonna miss it. If this locket is in a trophy case, then you better believe that he knows every pockmark and grain of dirt on that thing. Once he notices it's gone, he's gonna turn this place upside down, and when he finds it with us, well, I don't like the scuttlebutt I hear about that guy." Some of the guys around the table were nodding, telling Charlie he might have something, but Hadrian would not be put aside so easily. His nostrils flared, but he kept his composure in place. "Charles, how long are you doing on that string of B&Es? 8 years? 6 were good behavior," Charlie answered, but he didn't seem to like the taste of it. "Peter, you're doing 12 on an attempted murder charge, right?" Peter pursed his lips and nodded, looking like he'd eaten a lemon. "You're all doing serious time, and I think our new friend here has the shortest sentence at 5 years. There's a risk here, that much is certain, but the reward," he dragged the word out until it sounded dirty, "the rewards are freedom, benediction, and purpose. You want to make certain your women don't find solace in another's bed, don't you? That your children don't forget your face, that your fortunes do not remain hidden in the places you have put them for safekeeping. Well, this is the way to ensure that. Come with me and forge your own path away from this hellhole." His words moved them, and it was decided to a man that they would go along with his plan. Hadrian laid it all out for them. There would be 8 of us, a standard cleaning crew. John, Frank, Pete, and Mac would stay below to wax the floors, or cover should anyone ask questions. Charlie, Marcus, Hadrian, and I would go up to the office, clean it, get the thing, and get out quickly as possible. We'd be in and out in under an hour, well before the warden returned, and we'd have the locket hidden before it was noticed. We all nodded, and the heist was struck. As Tuesday came closer and closer, I started getting nervous. This was easily the most nerve-wracking weekend of my life, and I spent most of it just walking around inside the dorm. I just kept going over the plan again and again and again in my head. John, Frank, Pete, and Mac would stay below to wax the floor. Charlie, Marcus, Hadrian, and I would go upstairs and clean. We'd get the locket and be gone before it was noticed. As I paced, these facts ran around and around in my brain, and when Hadrian spoke up from behind me, I wondered how long he'd been walking there. "Stiff upper lip, boy. This'll be all over soon. In the meantime, try not to look so guilty, eh?" he said with a chuckle. I laughed, mine nervous and less confident, but I felt like throwing up more than anything. When Tuesday came, a guard I'd never seen came to get us and took us to the maintenance shed near B dorm. He had jumpsuits, the kind that custodial guys wore, and told us the warden had left for town about an hour and a half ago. "We have about 3 hours, gentlemen, if we're lucky, and I want to be out of there before then. Understood? I love the lady just as much as you do, Hadrian, but I won't risk the warden's wrath over that love. That man may be flesh and blood, but he scares the shit out of me." Hadrian had patted him, assuring him that it would be okay, and to keep faith. We set off 15 minutes later, pushing our mop and floor buckets and floor buffer and implements of destruction. I looked at the tower as it rose before me, an imposing giant that did not seem to have any love for me. Pete had told me that the tower had once been a rat-infested relic, that it was good for nothing but storing furniture. It had been cleaned out and cleaned up, and now the warden practically lived there. He had set up shop there and used it as a watchtower for the whole compound, sitting on the catwalk at all hours of the night and just watching people as they went by. Felt like he was watching us now, and that was not something that filled me with confidence. We got inside, the guard using one of the big ugly keys they often carried, and the floor crew set to work on the waxing. They opened the doors, the buffer making a lot of noise as they set to the recently tiled floor. They were talking, joking around, making it look natural, and we moved upstairs as they got to it, getting about the real business. "Okay, quick," the guard said, unlocking the door and letting us in to clean. The office took my breath away. It looked like nothing so much as an old English study, the floor covered in ceiling-to-floor bookshelves, and surrounding a huge dark wood desk. There was a green glass lamp on it, the kind you might see in a bank or an antique store, and the blotter had dates and things written on it in a neat hand. We set to cleaning, but there was really no reason to look very far. Set into one of the bookshelves was a lighted display case with a number of things in it. I could see a couple of lockets, a pocket watch, a set of cufflinks, and a totem carved out of stone that gave me a shudder. There were a lot of other things in there too, but I realized it wouldn't be that hard to find the locket we were looking for. There were only 3, and I had to assume it was the one lying open, with the picture of the nurse inside. The case was locked, but we had prepared for this. "You're up, Charlie," I said, and the little thief went to work. I had been a B&E guy, but Charlie claimed that breaking and entering was just a hobby for him when times were hard. He was actually a locksmith and a safe cracker, and he claimed to have opened a safe for the same bunch of officers that had arrested him when they got it into evidence. Their good opinion of him had only lasted until they caught his prints on 8 burglarized condos, and that had been the end of his reputation. He set to work with some pretty unorthodox tools, careful as he could be not to damage the lock or the cabinet. We were cleaning, but we were also watching Charlie as he worked. One false move and we were all screwed. We weren't even supposed to be here, and I knew we needed to get out as quickly as we could, but there was even less chance of us explaining the damage to the cabinet if we were caught. I was mopping the floor when I heard the lock open, and Charlie crowed that he still had it as Hadrian approached the cabinet. He went straight for the locket that I'd seen, and when he took something out of his pocket, I was surprised to see a replacement locket dangling from his hand. It wasn't a perfect match, not even close, but as he put it in place with the others, I had to admit that it would lead to some confusion later. He was about to close the cabinet again when his eyes lingered on the totem that sat there too. As he looked, I thought it might be the most emotion I had seen on his face the whole time I'd known him, and it was a dark hunger that made me a little afraid. "Come on," Charlie said. "We got a book." I turned back to see him closing the cabinet, and I couldn't help but notice that the totem was gone. We were heading for the door when I heard an angry yowl from the blotter and thought for sure that we were busted. We all turned to find the big old battered tomcat we all knew as Old One-Ear standing on the desk. His hackles were up, and he looked accusingly at us as if marking our faces. None of us would have admitted it, but I think that cat scared us worse than the warden would have, and we moved off slowly, not feeling right until the door was shut between us and the cat. We were gone about half an hour later, and as we got our uniforms back on and schlepped back to the dorm, I heard the guard's radio inform us that the warden was back on the compound. We all breathed a sigh of relief when we walked back in, prizes in hand, without even being caught. We expected an alarm to raise when the warden discovered that his things were missing, but it never happened. It's been 2 weeks, and there have been no extra searches, no memos have been sent, nothing has been done about it. We thought we had gotten away with it, but then something happened. They found Pete dead, stabbed to death, and pushed into the rec-yard bathroom. That had raised an alarm, but they never found the person responsible. We don't know if it was connected to the theft, but I know that all of us have started sticking a lot closer together since then. There are 11 members of the cult left, and we only need one more thing before our goal is within reach. On the full moon, at midnight, we'll go to the cemetery and raise our goddess from the dead. We will stand on her grave and perform the ritual, and we will receive our reward. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story, or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad, Unicorn Hollow, and Army Dude for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our spooky skeleton contributors. And thanks to Oh Snap, Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Grim Reaper, TomBoiTopUwU, and Queen Sheebah for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. And a big thanks to Scott Donahue for being our Ghostly Writer tier contributor. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. My time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.